is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fight Dialogue. My name is Tim. This is Ask Me Anything 12. Please give me a shout out. Let me know if the stream is working okay, if the audio is good. Jan Popovic, what is up, my friend? Thank you for joining me. As always, I will say, if you hear my dogs barking in the background, they're not barking right now, but I'm sure you will at some point, so I apologize ahead of time. Let me know that the audio is good, that everything is good, and we will begin. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a preview of the UFC 265 card because I did not get the chance to do that with Al over the weekend. Ethan Davis says, you're good. Thank you, my friend. I was going to do a podcast with Aldrich like I usually do before the big pay-per-views, but he was unable to. So here we are now. I got an impromptu live chat going, and I appreciate you joining me. So we're going to go over that, and then I'm going to open it up, and we can talk about whatever your little hearts desire. You may notice I'm a little bit dinged up. Got some scratches on my face. Got a little bit of ugly right here. That's perfectly normal. But it's also because I got beat up a little bit in sparring, so don't be alarmed. I don't need to go to the hospital. I'm good. So, UFC 265, it used to be, or it used to have, I should say, Amanda Nunes, and she was going to fight Lauren Murphy, I think her name is. And Murphy's a good fighter. She's really, really tough. But that fight fell through because Amanda got COVID, if I'm not mistaken. So now it's co-mained by Jose Aldo and Pedro Munoz. And then we got Michael Chiesa, Vicente Luque, Tisha Torres, Angela Hill, and Song Yadong versus Casey Kenny. That's still a really strong main event, or main card, I should say. So I'm liking that. And let's take a look at some of the prelims as well. The prelims are looking not too shabby. Manel Kopp versus Odie Osborne, that's a good one. Got a couple fights before that, but I don't really recognize the names. Manel Kopp, he's a good fighter out of Portugal, and he used to fight for Ryzen FC, and he was the champ there, the 125-pound champ. And he's had 2 fights in the UFC so far, and he's looked okay, but I don't know if he has any finishes in the UFC so far. So, we're gonna see what he's made of against Odie Osborne. Carolina Kowalowicz versus Jessica Penne, 2 former title challengers. Both coming off longish layoffs. Jessica Penne just came back, but it was her first fight back after like 4 years or something crazy like that. Carolina, I thought, was going to retire. She's a Polish fighter, I think. But anyway, those girls are pretty much at the same level, pretty much in the same spot in their career, so that should be a good fight. Alonzo Menefield versus Ed Herman. Ed Herman's been around forever, dude. Alonzo Menefield's got some power. Let's see. Don't know who the heck those guys are. Bobby Green versus Rafael Fiziev. Dude, that is a candidate for fight of the night. I'm loving that fight. That should be an excellent stand-up fight. Fiziev has just got world-class Muay Thai. It's just incredible Muay Thai. Bobby Green, he's got good hands, man. And I didn't like him at first. I thought a lot of his fights were boring. It was kind of like watching a really crappy Nate Diaz fight where he's just talking smack the whole time and then getting smacked. But like I said, not as entertaining. But he's kind of stepped up his game lately. He's gotten pretty good and got some nice wins under his belt. The Brown Guys MMA. Nice name. What's up, man? What else we got going on here? I usually pull up the window up on OBS, but for some reason it wasn't working, so you're just going to have to follow my narration here. Apologies. Song Yadong versus Casey Kenny. I really like Song Yadong. He's an excellent Chinese fighter, and I think he's been put in there with some tough matchups, and a lot of his wins are by like split decision. Excuse me. So, I can't remember the last time he finished somebody or if he's ever finished anybody. Casey Kenny coming off the loss to Dominic Cruz, no shame there. It was a good fight. Those guys should definitely, put on a good show, I think. Angela Hill versus Tisha Torres. Angela Hill, I think, should pretty handily beat Tisha Torres. Like, I don't think it's going to be a finish, but I think it's going to be a unanimous decision. Tisha Torres is good, but she's mostly a point fighter. And Angela Hill is dangerous everywhere. She's dangerous on the ground and obviously in the stand-up, which is her wheelhouse. And, she's pretty much made it in a very short amount of time. I think she's only been training MMA for like 6 or 7 years. And to be fighting at the level that she's at that point is crazy. Tisha Torres has been around for a very long time. She was a staple in Invicta FC. I mean, she's good. Both girls are very talented, but I think Angela Hill's going to take that. Michael Chiesa versus Vicente Luque. At first glance, I love this matchup. But based on how Chiesa's last few fights have gone, oh man, it's kind of boring, man. He's kind of really made his style very conservative. His stand-up is good. His ground game has always been incredible. But I remember when he first won the Ultimate Fighter, man, he was getting finishes like crazy. He was getting knockouts. He was getting rear naked choke victories. Granted, this was at lightweight. Now he's at welterweight. So maybe he has to mind his P's and Q's a little bit more against these bigger guys. But he was always enormous as a lightweight. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I hope it's not a boring fight, and with Vicente Luque in the equation, it's going to be very, very difficult to make it a boring fight, even if that's what Chiesa is going to try to do. But both guys are extremely talented. I give Chiesa the edge on the ground, and I give Vicente the edge in the stand-up. But both guys are not to be trifled with in any area. I'm going to take Vicente Luque for that, though. I don't think he's going to be able to knock Chiesa out, but I think it's going to be unanimous decision for Vicente. I think he's just going to accumulate the damage on Chiesa and get the win. Jose Aldo versus Pedro Munoz. This is going to be a really back and forth stand-up battle, I think. If we're talking about a prime Jose Aldo, I think he beats the brakes off Munoz. And some people will say that Jose Aldo is well past his prime. I think he hit a slump, certainly, after the after the Conor fight, and then there was the Max Holloway losses. And then he came back, and he had a couple good fights, and he fought at bantamweight, which is crazy to think about, because I remember when he was having difficulty making weight at featherweight. Excuse me. So he's definitely past his prime, but I don't think he's like, I don't know if it's fair to say he's in the twilight of his career, because he's still competing at the highest level, man. He's still fighting the best dudes in the division. And even when he takes a loss, like, he still puts up a good show. And Munoz, he's a very good guy, a very strong, highly ranked opponent in the UFC, but I wouldn't say he's elite level. He does have some wins over some former champs, or is it just one? Is it just Cody Garbrandt that he beat? But either way, Munoz is good, but I don't want to call him elite. And Jose Aldo is still elite because he's still fighting. Every single one of his fights is against an elite guy. So I'm going to take Jose Aldo in that fight, honestly. And then the main event, Derek Lewis versus Cyril Gane. And Aldrich was lucky enough to actually interview Cyril Gane not too long ago, about a year ago, on our channel. And if you want to, you can go back and check that out. It was a nice interview. Cyril was very kind to give us that interview. So you may think my opinion is a little bit biased going into this, but I love me some Derek Lewis. He is amazing. I love both these fighters, and I hate picking against either one of them. And a couple podcasts ago, we discussed how silly it is that this is for an interim belt, and the politics and the bureaucracy of the UFC, and just all the craziness going on behind the scenes with that. And I think that Francis Ngannou beats both of these guys, to be honest. But I don't want to get into that too much. But I do want to say that in terms of just the fight itself, this is a great fight, man. The contrast of styles is, of course, Derek Lewis has the power. He's a brawler. He's tough to submit or do anything to on the ground because he just gets right the fuck up somehow. And Cyril Gane he's less experienced, but he is a very large heavyweight. And he is super technical. He's probably one of the most technical fighters at heavyweight. He's amongst the best in terms of technique. I'm talking like Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier. Like, he's in that conversation when it comes to just raw technique. So that's his advantage going in against Derek Lewis, and he has all the tools to beat Derek Lewis. If he's smart and he goes in there and he, stays honest and doesn't get into a brawl with Derek Lewis, he's going to win this fight. I don't know if he's going to use much grappling. I think it's going to be mostly a kickboxing battle, maybe with a little bit of grappling mixed in. But Cyril Gane is good on the ground, but I just don't think that that's really a viable option against Derek Lewis, unless you've got like next level jiu-jitsu or wrestling, like in the case of Daniel Cormier or like a Frank Mir or somebody like that from the past. So yeah, I think Cyril Gane is going to win this fight, but at any moment Derek Lewis could knock him out. And I know you can say that about any Derek Lewis fight, but yeah, Cyril Gane's got to watch out, man. So I really like this card despite the fallout of the co-main event, and I'm going to be watching it. And of course, as we do with every single UFC pay-per-view, we do a fight picking contest. And Rev Gear's giving out a duffel bag or like a training bag for the first place winner, because Rev Gear is fucking awesome for sponsoring that contest for us. Definitely go check out Rev Gear. Link in the description. And if you want to enter the contest, you could just comment anywhere pretty much. I read all the comments, guys, like on all the videos. I read them all. So you can just comment your picks for the main card and you're entered into the contest. It's that easy. Or you could just DM us on social media or something if you want to be super secretive about your picks. So we got some more people on the live stream now. Welcome. Again, I will reiterate, I apologize for my dogs that will inevitably bark in the background, and I apologize for all the ugly I got on my face. I got dinged up in my last sparring match with this kid named Rory. He's about 30 pounds heavier than me, and he's a lot better at MMA than I am. So he beat me up a little bit. And if you want to see that sparring match, I got it on our Patreon. Because I don't just let anybody watch me get my ass kicked. I only watch my best friends on Patreon. Watch that. So head over to the Patreon, check that out. All right, guys, I'm going to start answering your questions here because it looks like we've filled up some of that. And the first one appears to be... I'm just laughing at the fact that Jan Popovic called Bobby Green Booby Green. I don't know if that's a typo or a burn. So it looks like the first question is from the Brown Guys MMA. Izzy versus Rob 2. And I just made a video called How Good is Robert Whittaker's Striking, so that you guys could possibly get an idea of how Rob will do against Izzy in their second fight, which will inevitably happen. Who do I pick for that fight? Honestly, I still pick Izzy. I love Robert Whittaker. I think he's made some excellent improvements to his game, and he fights a bit more conservative. If you watch that first fight with Adesanya, he was blitzing even more than he usually does. I watched every single one of his fights in research for that video, for the Robert Whittaker video. And for those of you that don't know and are constantly asking me to do videos on this guy and do videos on that guy, I would love to do videos on all the guys that you request. But so much research goes into every single one of those videos. I got to go back and pretty much watch like all of their fights. And then I got to, edit it and do all that stuff. So it's a lot of work. So I wish I could get to all of them, but I got to be a little bit picky and choosy with who I make a video about. But anyway, as I was researching that Robert Whittaker fight, I noticed that, he of course does that karate blitz where he, that very linear movement where he explodes forward and he attacks with straight punches and kicks. Excuse me. And he would do that in fits and spurts in a lot of his other fights. And he would be a little bit more tricky about it. In the Adesanya fight, I don't know if it was like, I don't know what his game plan was, but that's all he was doing. Every single exchange during the Adesanya fight was him launching himself at Adesanya and either missing or connecting and then getting countered. But yeah, he was far more aggressive in the Adesanya fight than I had ever seen him be, and I have ever seen him be since. I've never seen him that aggressive before. And he paid for it because Adesanya is a master counterpuncher. But also when you watch that fight, it was kind of working. Like, Whittaker was landing, and some of the punches were like they were landing at the end of his punch, so they didn't have as much power behind it. Some of the punches Adesanya was kind of like rolling with, but either way, he was connecting. Excuse me. Got a frog in my throat. The punches were connecting, and I don't know if Robert is capable of getting in the pocket to land on Adesanya any other way besides that karate blitz. Like, he's got good kicks for sure, and he can land kicks all day against Adesanya. He'll probably eat a few kicks for his troubles, but Whittaker is a good kicker. I don't know if he's going to be able to get into punching range, though, without getting countered. And spoiler alert, I didn't give him the best score in the world for his chin. So even though the strategy going into the Adesanya fight worked against him, I don't know what other strategy you would use against Adesanya if you were Robert Whittaker. So my very, very, very long-winded answer is I think Adesanya wins that fight. Brown Guys MMA also asks, who should Macy Barber fight next? Man, I don't know. I'm really not that impressed with Macy Barber over her past few fights. A couple people have been calling her the shadow boxing champ because that's pretty much what it looks like when she's striking. So I don't know. She looked really good against the much lower ranked opponents of the division, but anybody that she fights now with any kind of real rank, she has trouble against. And I know she technically won her last fight against Miranda Maverick, but I think that was a horrible decision. Jan Popovich says a rematch with Modafferi. Yeah, I could see that, especially the way the last one ended was with a weird little injury. Okay, Lucas Acevedo, good to see you again, my good sir. What do you think about Vicente Luque's grappling? I think he's a good grappler. I think there's been a couple moments, and I'm trying to remember particularly in the Barberena fight, which was fantastic. If you've never seen that fight ever, go watch it right now. Just turn off this live stream. Just go on UFC Fight Pass and watch that fight, because it's one of the best fights, most entertaining fights of recent history. But there were some grappling exchanges in that fight, and a couple times where they were both going for submissions. And I know both guys are tough, and they were kind of just toughen their way out of the submissions, but a lot of it was not technical. It was really just heart and grit, and we saw that from both guys, and not just in a defensive context, but also in the offensive context. You know, you got a guillotine, and instead of switching or changing your angle and adjusting, there was a lot of just like, just squeeze his head off. So I think his grappling is good. I think he's definitely it's definitely serviceable at an elite level of the UFC, which is basically saying his grappling is good. But I don't think he's the most technical grappler, and there's definitely improvements that he can make for sure. Monkey Plats. You guys know where I got some of TJ's clean juice. I don't know what that even means. Is he saying that TJ's clean now and he wants whatever he's got going on right now? Because that fight against Corey Sandhagen was really good, man. And a lot of people like to point out that was TJ Dillashaw after a 2-year layoff against a guy who's much more active than him and very highly ranked. So yeah, I mean, TJ put up a good showing. I scored that fight for Sandhagen, but it wasn't a tragedy that Dillashaw won. But yeah, man, I'm excited for that division now. That's a crazy addition to the weight class. King Carte says, if Derek Lewis beats Gane and then beats Francis for the heavyweight title, is he a top 10 heavyweight of all time? Of all time. See, what constitutes being an all-time great? Is it who you've beaten? Is it how you've won your fights? Is it how quickly you've made it to a title? How many titles you have? I think any one of those can conceivably put you in the talks for all-time great. But I don't know, man. In the case of Ciryl Gane, if he beats Derek Lewis and then beats Francis Ngannou, that would definitely be impressive. But I think you have to check more than one box. And the box that he would be checking, if he took that path, would be a very meteoric rise to the title. So that's one check mark. But I think he got it hit at least more than one. So beating Ngannou is definitely a big check mark. But because it's Ngannou, everyone's going to say like, oh, like no matter how he wins, they're going to say it's a fluke and there needs to be a rematch. You know, whether he sits there and he stays on the outside and point fights him, people are going to say, oh, it was a boring fight. Like, he really needs to get in there and actually fight him, and then we'll see. So that was a fluke. And then if he rushes in there and clips Ngannou with a crazy haymaker, they're going to say, oh, well, that was a lucky punch. They need to have a rematch. So because of who these two guys are and where they are at in their career, no matter how Ciryl Gane wins, there's going to be a rematch. So I think to consider him an all-time great, it would really come down to that rematch and if he won it or not. But that's an interesting question. 17 people in the chat right now, and only 8 likes. I guess half of you hate me. That's okay, though. But if you feel like it, hit the like button so that people start watching more. Milkman, you can find TJ's clean juice under your local Octagon next to John Jones. I like that. the Brown guys MMA. Let's talk about Pitbull versus AJ. And I'll be completely honest with you guys. I did not see. There's some likes. Thank you very much. I did not see the full fight. I only saw the highlight, but it ended in the first round, so I'm guessing I didn't miss much. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if there was a grappling exchange in the beginning of the fight or what happened. But the bottom line was AJ McKee came forward aggressively. He clipped Pitbull, and Pitbull kind of like stumbled back like he was rocked. And then McKee jumped on his neck, got him in a standing guillotine, and pinned him up against the fence. And then it looked like the stoppage was like, I don't know, I guess you could say controversial, because he tested Pitbull's arm and it seemed to have gone limp. But then as soon as McKee let the choke go, Pitbull was fine, or seemed to be fine. But I mean, like if you're not responsive when the ref is checking to see if you're conscious, then I don't know what else you expect the ref to do. So clean win for AJ McKee as far as I am concerned, and incredible, just incredible. Pitbull is considered by many to be one of the pound for pound best fighters in all of MMA right now, not just Bellator, but all of MMA, including UFC fighters. He's a champ, and he's beaten some really tough dudes. He's beaten Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler's last fight in Bellator, he knocked him out clean, and Michael Chandler's a lot bigger than him. He's much bigger. And Pitbull is the featherweight and the lightweight champ. I guess now he's only the lightweight champ, if I'm not mistaken. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I paid attention to Bellator, really. But yeah, and AJ McKee just blasted his way up to the title in the Grand Prix and won. And we just spoke about meteoric rises. That kid had a meteoric rise to the top. The guys that he beat were good. You know, they're not the best, but even still, like the way he won with just the crazy knockouts, the crazy submissions and neck cranks and whatnot. AJ McKee is the real deal. And I don't know if they're going to have a rematch or what the fuck's going to happen, but I think AJ McKee is going to be a champion for a while, honestly. He's got that X factor. Oh boy. Let's see. Milkman. It's kind of a shame that Bellator got only a fraction of the views that the UFC had. Yeah, and that was when the UFC was doing a fight night card. It wasn't even a pay-per-view. I think part of that, I don't know. Bellator's been weird, and now they're on Showtime. I don't know what fell through with DAZN, but I thought DAZN was a better deal for them than Showtime is. Like, they were so hyped about the Showtime deal, and I was just like, meh. Like, I don't really think it does anything for them. I don't think enough people use or watch Showtime, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it was better when they were on fucking Spike TV, you know? I watched them more when they were on Spike TV. So, and even when they were on DAZN, like DAZN has a YouTube channel where they would post the highlights of what happened during the card, and that was how I kind of stayed up to date with Bellator. Because yeah, I could illegally stream it if I wanted to, but half the time I'm at work on a Friday night and a Saturday night when they're having the events, so it's hard to watch those illegal streams sometimes even. So I'm forced to watch it afterwards, and when it's on Showtime, it can be a pain. Angelo Kaz asks, which prospects do you rate most highly? Well, I guess it depends on what you consider a prospect. I consider a prospect somebody who hasn't made it to the UFC yet. You know, these guys that fight in Cage Warriors and LFA and those types of organizations that kind of feed the UFC. I think those are the true prospects. I think if you've made it to the UFC in any capacity, you are an elite fighter forever. Like at this point in the history of the sport, you're somebody if you've made it to the UFC. You're no longer a prospect. But I think what you're asking is who in the UFC that is unranked do I feel has the best chance of getting ranked and then eventually making it to an elite level championship status type thing. And I have a couple guys. I think Paddy Pimblett is definitely one. He tore it up in Cage Warriors and just choked the shit out of everybody. He's got fantastic jiu-jitsu. He's very spunky, very aggressive. His stand-up has a little bit to be desired, but he's still game, man. Like, he'll still get in there and throw punches. So I like Paddy Pimblett. Sean Brady? I almost called him Tom Brady. Sean Brady. He trains with Paul Felder and Daniel Gracie, and he's just south of me. I'm in Northeast PA. He's in Southeast PA down in Philly. He's really good. And when you watch him fight, like, he's got good stand-up, and his ground game is just, he's a fucking gorilla, man. He just gets you to the ground and pressures you, crushes you, and then eventually submits you. And he's built like a brick shit house, which is where I think he got his name from, his nickname. So those are two guys that I am definitely watching out for. And I think Herbert Burns is quite good as well. I think he has a loss or two in the UFC at this point, but his wins in the UFC have been very impressive. And, you know, obviously who he's related to is kind of a determining factor in that as well. Max Middleton says, do you think Islam Makhachev can become the next Khabib? What do you predict from Islam versus RDA? Personally, I think Islam. Excellent question, sir. I don't like the comparisons, the constant comparisons. I could see a comparison here or there because they are similar style, similar faith, similar appearance. They're training partners, they're friends. So I get why the comparisons are made, but in a way it's unfair because Khabib is the consensus lightweight GOAT, possibly the greatest of all time. And Islam he's still moving his way up through the ranks. And I think we need to give the guy time to really establish himself. Because when you think about it, who has he fought? He's fought some tough guys. He's fought some good guys. But I don't think he's fought any elite guys yet. Folks, if you're just joining, we're talking about Islam Makhachev right now. I don't think he's fought anybody elite yet. And on top of that, he's fought very few elite grapplers. And spoiler alert, the next How Good Is Their Grappling I'm making is going to be about Islam Makhachev. Right before I got on the live chat, I was making the video about him. And hopefully I can get that up very soon. So I don't want to spoil too much of what I talk about in that video, but I will say, he's fought maybe 3 very high-level grapplers. And they gave him trouble at points. They actually gave him some trouble. So I want to give him some time. I think he's very, very good. He's one of the best grapplers at lightweight. But there's a lot of good grapplers at lightweight, so I want to see how he does against them. You know, you got Gregor Gillespie, you've got Michael Chandler, you got Charles Oliveira, you know. I don't want to throw him in there just because he is drawing all these parallels with Khabib stylistically. You know, it's clear why he is drawing those parallels, but still, he's untested in many ways, and he does make mistakes. He has made mistakes in the past, and he's made mistakes recently in terms of even stuff on the ground. He was in some weird situations against his most recent opponent, Thiago Moises. And, there was a leg locking exchange where like he looked to his corner like he didn't know what to do. So if you do that against like a Charles Oliveira, you're going to be in trouble, man. So I don't want to throw him in there with the likes of elite fighters like that yet. I think the RDA fight is a good step up for him. Finally, he probably should have fought RDA a couple years ago, and I know Islam has gone through some injuries and stuff like that. So that's probably why that hasn't happened yet. But RDA is a good test. He's an excellent striker. He's a fantastic grappler. It kind of sucks for RDA because even though RDA is a very high-level grappler, I would consider him an elite grappler. He is a grappler of a certain style. And that style of his doesn't gel very well with good wrestlers. We saw it against Kamaru Usman. We saw it against Khabib Nurmagomedov. We saw it against a load of other guys. And the only, I would say, high-level wrestler that he's beaten was Kevin Lee. But that is because Kevin Lee's submission defense is quite poor. So RDA was able to overcome that challenge. So I think Islam is going to win this fight because stylistically it is very good for him. But I do think it is a necessary bump in the road for him to overcome RDA because RDA is who he is. Monkey Platt says Lewis is one of the few fighters that can beat guys that are way better than him. Yeah, man. And that's what happens when you've got enough power to knock out a fucking bull elephant. Milkman. That's not a question. My bad. The Brown Guys MMA says, bro, your mustache is great, by the way. I am a fan of your work. Respect. If by my work you mean the work I put into this mustache, I appreciate you. Yeah, man. The mustache is the only thing I can grow with any confidence whatsoever. Everything else grows in patchy and disgusting, and I look like a homeless person when I grow it out. So the mustache is grown out as a means to look as manly as possible without having to grow out my despicable beard. Monkey Platt says, have you ever gotten knocked out? No, I have never gotten knocked out, but I've been rocked pretty badly before. I may have told this story on a different live chat, but when I first started sparring, and this was like 10 years ago, my instructor, Garrett, shout out to Garrett Goldsberry in New Jersey, he told me, get your shin guards, get your mouthpiece, get your headgear, and get your gloves, and I'll throw you in there. Because I had been taking his kickboxing class for a couple months to that point. So he throws me in there, and I've always been a tall guy. I'm 6'1", 6'2" on a good day, but I've also always been a scrawny little golem creature with, I'm just skin and bones. And this was 10 years ago, so I was even skinnier back then. And the problem with being very, very skinny, but also very, very tall, is that you get thrown in there with big dudes in the training room because you're at eye level with them. So in the eyes of your instructors, you should be able to handle them. So my instructor throws me in there with this guy, I think his name was Jesse, and he was like 210, 220 pounds, about my height, super athletic, had been sparring for years, and Garrett tells him to go easy on me. And of course he doesn't. At least it didn't feel like it. And he was pressuring me. He was pressuring me a lot. He was being aggressive. And I threw an overhand right. Probably I threw it a little bit too hard. But I'm new to sparring. I don't know how to control anything yet. So I cracked him. And he didn't like that. So then he pressured me more. and he hit me with just a simple 1-2-3 combination and knocked me flat on my ass. And I remember getting hit, and there was 3 white flashes for each time I got hit. And I remember thinking like, oh, so that's what they mean when they say you're seeing stars. Like, I always thought it was like a euphemism or something, but like you literally see stars. It's like flashes in your vision. And then I told Garrett about it, my instructor at the time, and he was like, yeah, dude, that's your brain hitting the inside of your skull. And I was like, oh, that's great. So yeah, it's not fun being hit in the head. I try to avoid it as much as possible nowadays. But yeah, fun stuff. That was my story of how I got rocked for the first time. Yusuf, what's up, man? How long does it take to master the roundhouse kick or any type of kick? Well, I haven't really mastered any kicks. I like, at least not in my mind. I'm pretty good. I have pretty good low kicks, I would say. I have a pretty good setup. I have a pretty sneaky setup, and I'm halfway decent at using my hands to set up my kicks. And most of my kicks come in the form of the rear leg roundhouse to the legs, or to the thighs and to the calf. It can be hard to set up the one to the body, especially if you've got a guy that's fighting with their hands a lot lower or with their elbows kind of close to the ribs like that, because it sucks kicking a guy in the elbow. And yeah, so you got to get their arms moving. You got to get them circling a certain way. You got to get their arms up away from their body, and even then sometimes it doesn't work. And I use a teep kick. If I was sparring like somebody I didn't like, I would use a head kick. But yeah, I don't really use that many other kicks besides that. So I guess I'm the wrong person to be asking about mastering kicks, because like I said, I use kicks. I love kicks, but I don't think I've mastered any of them. Monkey Plats. Sparred a lad with a mustache yesterday, actually. Well, that's good, because you got to keep those guys honest. Sometimes they feel overly manly because of this, and it's just like you got to put them back in their place sometimes before they get too confident. Anthony C. says, also Mousasi versus Adesanya, who wins? Oh, I definitely think Adesanya wins that. Mousasi's still good, but I would say he's, it's not like he's in the twilight of his career, excuse me, but he's past his prime. And even when he was in his prime, I don't think he could have beat Adesanya. I think I skipped a few here. My bad. Anthony C. also says, do you think that Ortega is a bad matchup for Volkanovski? I don't think he's a bad matchup. Like, I don't think there's anything glaringly wrong with Volkanovski's style when you throw a submission guy like Brian Ortega at him. But I think it is an interesting matchup because, to my knowledge, Volkanovski's not fought anybody like that before. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. Angelo Kaz says, I would be so sad if Tony versus Gregor Gillespie got signed. Why? Because of the stylistic matchup? Because Gillespie's a very good wrestler with good submission defense, and Tony historically has trouble with wrestlers? Because if that's the case, I agree with you. Sky Cow, Keanu Reeves 321. What is your martial arts background? I have been training in jiu-jitsu and various forms of striking for the past 11 years now. And I focus mostly on grappling, mostly on jiu-jitsu. I'm a brown belt in jiu-jitsu now. And I've trained, I've never taken a Muay Thai class, but I've been surrounded by a lot of guys that do Muay Thai, and I've picked up some tips and tricks from them. And a lot of guys who have kickboxed before, so I've picked up some stuff from them. But I would never claim to be a striking expert or somebody who has trained like exclusively in striking for a very long time. I've been training in sparring or striking for as long as I've been doing jiu-jitsu, but my focus has definitely been more on the grappling side. So anything that I say, take with a grain of salt when it comes to striking expertise. TJ has a juice company called Clean Juice. See, I didn't know that. That was from Monkey Platz. I did not know that he had his own company. And that is hilarious that it's called Clean Juice. Jan Popovich, what do you think about the light heavyweight division? I feel like it's better now than it was just a couple of years ago, mostly because of all the new faces and the absence of John. Also, Jan Blachowicz is cool. Jan Blachowicz is cool. And there is some truth to that, but it always works out that way. Get this pillow out of here. It always works out that way whenever you have a very dominant champion. It kind of puts the division in a weird spot. We saw it with the 125-pound division when Mighty Mouse was the champion for as long as he was. It almost gets boring to a point when a champion is so dominant because you're not watching it with the mindset of, oh, who's going to win? You're watching it with the mindset of, oh, who is this champion who's super dominant? Who are they going to destroy next? And it becomes stale. It's not as interesting. I think the most interesting thing when it comes to watching an MMA fight is when they are so closely matched in skill that you really don't know who's going to win. Good question, though. But to answer your question, I kind of went off on a little rant right there. To answer your question, what do I think of the light heavyweight division? I think it is more interesting now, but that interestingness, if that's a word, came from having a dominant champion for so long, and then finally, when that champion left, or in the case of any other division, when they get defeated, it spices things up. Like, it wouldn't be as interesting if John Jones wasn't so dominant for so long and then suddenly was gone. And it's that power vacuum that makes things interesting, is the point that I'm trying to make. Lucas Acevedo, who should Ryan Hall fight next? That's an interesting one. I really thought that Ryan Hall had the tools to make it to the title. And in a way, I still think that. But after his last fight, what I learned about Ryan Hall is that, at least in that fight, he displayed an inability to adapt, because he clearly went into that fight against Ilya Topuria. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. Whatever. You know who I'm talking about. He went into that fight with a game plan, and his game plan, as it always is quite weird. And in this fight, it was even weirder, because usually his game plan is spinning back kick, spinning back kick, spinning back kick, pull guard. And in this fight, it was spinning back kick, forward roll into some weird leg entanglement. And he just would not deviate from that plan at all, even when it clearly wasn't working for him after it had to have been a dozen tries. And if you're going to make it to a championship level of fighting, you need to be able to adapt, because Ryan Hall has a style that is so unique and so dangerous that, of course, all the prospects and all the up-and-comers of the division are going to be studying you. And if you cannot deviate from that plan whatsoever, eventually somebody's going to figure you out. And Topuria figured him out. Stay away from the back kick, stay away from the back kick, stay away from the guard pull, and then eventually land a big shot. And that's what he did. So Ryan Hall, I think that style still works against most guys in the division. Ilia Topuria is just very smart, very sneaky, and very well-rounded. He needed to have at least a serviceable grappling pedigree to have gotten out of some of those grappling exchanges with Ryan Hall. I still think Ryan Hall beats most guys in the division, but in order to get to that elite level, he's got to switch some things up, and he's got to be able to make changes on the fly. Good question. Popovic, correct me if I'm wrong. One of them's wrong, so tell me which one's right. Also, do you listen to Jack Slack? I really enjoy his podcast, and I think he knows his stuff. I have been told about Jack Slack, but I have never watched him before, to be honest. But maybe I will now, because I'm hearing a lot of good things about the guy. Max Middleton, what is your martial arts background? I did answer the question of what my background is, but the second part of your question is, have you done any competitions or had any injuries? And yes, I've done many jiu-jitsu competitions. I'm not super competitive. I don't compete because I like it. I compete because basically I kind of just want to see where I'm at in the pecking order. So for each belt since blue belt in jiu-jitsu, I've done like 3 competitions per belt, with mixed results. You know, I've had a bunch of losses and a bunch of wins as well. So, but I will say, out of all my wins, and I've had a few dozen wins, only one of them was from points. By winning on points, I mean. All the other ones were submission wins. So at least I got that going for me. In terms of injuries, I've had a lot of small injuries. I ripped my AC joint up here once. I was going for a takedown, and it was a double leg takedown, and my wrestling fucking sucks. And the guy sprawled, and when he sprawled, my arms kind of outstretched like this because I was at this point reaching for his legs, and they just weren't there anymore. And he sprawled so hard on top of me that both of our weights came down on top of my shoulder and ripped my AC joint. And the worst injury I ever had was I slipped my disc between C5 and C6, and that was because some dude got me in a Darce choke, and I was defending it. So then where were we? We were in a weird position. I was in bottom half guard, and he was on top of me, and he got a Darce choke from half guard, and I started to defend it. So he kind of put all his weight on top of my head and rolled and like turned it into a guillotine, but he exploded into it, and all I heard was like a really bad pop in my neck, and then I tapped. But then I felt okay after that. And then a couple hours later, I guess after the adrenaline, came down, like I couldn't turn my head. Everything was hurting. And I had to go home early from work that night. And yeah, I had slipped a disc in my neck and I had to get surgery. I still have a faint scar from the surgery right here. And now I have to be really careful when I train just so that I don't mess up my neck anymore. Let's see. I lost my spot now. I'm sorry. And guys, I'm going to be getting out of here in about 10 minutes because I got to go to work in a little bit. I really appreciate the fact that you guys joined in on this. So if you have any more questions, get them in now. I'm going to try to blast through these questions as quickly as possible. Do you think that Gus defeated John in the first fight? No, I don't. I think the difference in that fight was John Jones' spinning back elbow that he rocked Gus pretty badly with. And when you have a fight that's very close and that is going to a decision, I like to pick the guy that came the closest to finishing the fight. Regardless of who had the most this or who had the most that, the guy who came closest to finishing the fight is the guy that won in my mind. And that's why I think John Jones won that fight. Francesco Genovese, what is up, my friend? What is that thing near your nose? Hematoma, swell, or something? It is all fucked up. Like I had like a pimple there, and then I got punched like 5 times there when I was sparring in MMA, and then it swelled up and got really nasty. And it's going down now, but it was super swollen, and I'm all scratched up here. I'm all beat up today, man. Why you gotta point out my ugly for? No, I'm just kidding. I don't care. Angelo Kaz, do you even train UFC, bro? I do train UFC, bro. Unfortunately, I get beat up when I do it. My MMA skills have not progressed as well as my other skills. I'm trying, though. Combat study, UFC 265, lock of the night. I think you mean fight of the night. Melissa Gatto, fight of the night. Yadong versus Kenny. I'm not sure if that's a question. What do I think is going to be fight of the night? I think Fiziev and Bobby Green might be fight of the night. Either that or the main event between Derek Lewis and Cyril Gane. Francisco Genovese, kind of off-topic question. What do you think about mukbangs, mukbangers, and basically people who eat inhumanly large amounts of food, mostly garbage, and get paid for it? I don't know what a mukbanger is. Are you talking about like the people on YouTube that just like eat stuff and then people just watch them eat it and it's really gross? Because I think that is disgusting, and I don't watch any of that. Combat study, upset of the night. Anderson Dos Santos. I know he's one of the fighters on the prelim cards, on the early prelims of this upcoming card. But I don't know what you're asking, man. You got to structure these sentences better so I can figure out what you're talking about. I'm high on Sean Brady and Topuria. Yeah, Topuria looked really good after that Ryan Hall win, I tell you what. Jan Popovich, what is your honest opinion of Sean O'Malley? I think his striking is crisp, but I haven't seen him fight a wrestler. Also, his bird bones concern me. Yeah, I guess you could say that about his legs at least. I think Sean O'Malley is good. I think his striking is impressive, and I also think that he has that X factor. You know, he has that thing about him that just makes people want to watch him. And I think that's important for the sport. Whether you like him or not, it is important to have characters like that in the sport. Yeah, he needs to fight a wrestler, and honestly, I don't think he'll do too well in that fight against a high-level wrestler. He's got good grappling. He's okay in jiu-jitsu. I think he's a purple belt, maybe a brown belt by now. But yeah, I think a wrestler would beat him up pretty badly. Sky Cow, could you do a how good is Zabit Magomed-Sharapov striking? Yeah, that could definitely be something that I do down the line, especially if he gets a crack at the title. I think that would be a perfect time to showcase his skills for sure. Do you think X-Guard is viable in MMA? Very interesting question. I do, but probably not in the same way that it is viable in a jiu-jitsu fight, obviously, because you're going to get punched in the face. You just are. Unless you constantly off balance, unless you constantly kazushi. And what I mean by that is as soon as you get underneath the guy, as soon as you pull into X-guard, you have to get that guy's weight onto his hands. If you don't, he's going to punch you. And if he's punching you, then your X-guard is going to be rendered ineffective. Much like a leg lock, if you enter into a leg lock in MMA, you have to threaten with it immediately. You have to put that guy's leg in a position where it is uncomfortable for him, and he sees that his only option is to address it by rolling a certain way or fighting hands or doing something else other than punching you, because you are in a horrible spot to be punched from those types of leg entanglements. So I do believe that it is viable. And I think that the guys like the Danaher Death Squad that come over into MMA, right now we only have Gary Tonin really, and he's in 1FC. But if you take those guys and you put them into MMA, they would be able to make it work. Other than that, though, it's usually the guy on top that's going to win in those exchanges. Very interesting question, though. I like it. CJ Flames, hi, I'm a kickboxer. Why do you think kickboxers usually don't do good when going into MMA? I don't think that's true 100%. Kickboxers, and it depends on what style of kickboxing you're talking about, kickboxers generally have very underdeveloped grappling skills. Because if you take something like Muay Thai, where the clinch is encouraged and where you have sweeps and other stuff like that have to do with grappling, it's very transferable to MMA. And you have to have both. Like, you can't just take a jiu-jitsu guy and throw him into MMA and expect him to do good. Not in today's sport. You could get away with that in the advent of the sport, but not anymore. You have to be somewhat well-rounded. So, kickboxers are a little bit behind in that regard, that they don't know how to grapple in any way, shape, form, or position. But it's not that they can't learn it, you know. If they learn some grappling and then they bring their kickboxing skills over, they can make it work. Combat study, O'Malley shows good scrambles in a match versus Tyrion Ware. Tyrion Ware. Who's Tyrion Ware? Combat study has got some people that I don't know about. Jan Popovich. Islam Makhachev hasn't fought anyone elite. People don't know this, but Thiago Moises wasn't even ranked until that fight was booked. I did not know that. Rafulia Kozad. I'm probably pronouncing your name wrong. I apologize. Hi, and great to have this live again. Yuri Prochazka versus Israel Adesanya at light heavyweight division. Who do you think wins and why? I think Yuri Prochazka wins that because his chin is very good. So he can take the counters from Adesanya. He's super aggressive, so he's going to get in there. He's going to hit Adesanya. And he's just unpredictable, man. So it's going to be hard for Adesanya to deal with a guy, especially like that, who has a size advantage over him. I'm jumping all over the place here. I'm getting screwed up. I'm sorry. XY, is the crucifix position superior to the mount in MMA? Yes. I would say it's worse because in the mount position you have options. In the you can use your hips to escape. You can roll the guy. You can spin and let the guy take your back. It's not ideal, but it's an option. You can even create situations where you can come up into a leg lock or go out the back door. In the crucifix position, you are extremely limited in terms of options. And it's not as bad in jiu-jitsu because the guy on top is limited in what he can do. There's only a few submissions from the crucifix position. But in MMA, when you have the ability to strike, why else would you do anything else? You know, that's what you're going to do. I think the crucifix position is much more, prominent in MMA. All right, guys, my dogs are starting to bark a little bit here, so I don't know what's going on there. And I don't want you guys to have to listen to that. And I got to get out of here in like a few minutes. So I'm going to answer a few more questions. Let's answer a question from a person that I have not answered yet. Shut up. Sorry about that. Canut the Grape. Who you got for Vittori versus Costa? Sorry about that, guys. My dogs are barking. Dogs, shut up, please. I'm trying to finish my live chat here. I've got Vettori because Vettori is a little bit more well-rounded. He's got good wrestling, and Costa, I haven't really seen much of his wrestling, you know? Peter Tiba says, I haven't answered him yet. Okay, let me find your question there, buddy. Let me find your question. Post it again for me, and I'll answer it. Post it again. Tail the tape. I just saw your question. Good to see you, my friend. I don't know if you're still in the chat. Peter, what is your question? I can't find it. Oh, there it is. I'm sorry. I'm blind. Could you please do a how good is Jorge Masvidal striking and grappling? I think even though he got knocked out, he's still one of the most dangerous boxers in the UFC. I think Jorge Masvidal is fantastic, man. I would love to do a breakdown of one of his skill sets. And I think I might do that on whenever his next fight gets announced. Because that would be fun. That would definitely be fun. And one more from Peter. Do you think Conor McGregor can beat Justin Gaethje? Yes, I do. I think that's actually a fantastic matchup for McGregor and a fight that he can win, although he has to worry about those leg kicks. And if his leg isn't fucking healthy and it's got a stress fracture or God knows what else, then Gaethje's just going to kick his fucking legs right out from under him. So, yeah, he's got to be healthy and he's got to be smart. But I think that is a definitely winnable fight for Mr. McGregor. And that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for getting on the live chat with me, talking about stuff, and showing me some love. Guys, we got a new sponsor. It is Enhanced CBD, and you may notice that their stuff comes in a little octagon-sized box with cage-like illustrations on the side, because it's good for MMA fighters. And they sent me this stuff, and I told you before that my neck was hurting. Oh, and I took some of their stuff. I don't know what this one is. I took this one. This is the 1,500 milligrams isolate, and I'm feeling pretty good. I'm liking it. So I got the link in the description for that. These guys are really cool. Check out their stuff. 10% off through us. As always, check out Rev Gear stuff. Enter into our contest, our fight picking contest. We give away free shit, okay, for those that win the contest. And it's just fun, even if you don't win. Enjoy the fights, guys, this weekend. They're going to be good. And I appreciate you all. I love you all. And see you on the next one. Peace.